Hey family, we have marched into the third month of the calendar year, and let's discuss a few celebratory events happening this month. March 8th, International Women's Day, marks a worldwide celebration of women's rights and celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, is Ireland's National Day, celebrating the Irish patron St. Patrick. This day is celebrated all around the world with Guinness and shamrock decorations. March 18th is Global Recycling Day and is a day to recognize and celebrate the importance recycling plays in preserving our precious primary resources and securing the future of our planet. It is a day for the world to come together and put the planet first. March 20th, 2022, spring begins. Woo woo! March 27th is Mother's Day in the UK. Finally, March 6th is the day season 2, episode 3 of Danielle Inspires premieres. Hip hip hooray for that. I am in the house with you today, and I'd like to know what's happening with you in March. Let me know in chat or via instant message. I'm sure you have a few events on your itinerary to accomplish this month. I would love to help you kick off this month in the second quarter of the calendar year with insights and inspiration to promote psychological safety and a sense of belonging at home. Psychological safety and belonging are topics discussed most often in a workplace. At work, you might have a diversity, equity, and inclusion department spearheading those discussions. It is understandable why an organization made of unrelated people performing seemingly unrelated tasks would need to be sure that every employee feels like they belong. At home, however, there is no diversity officer in place to ensure that the culture in the home is one of inclusion and equity. We look at home differently than a workplace because it's a place where we are building families and relationships based on our choices. Why might a mother, husband, sister, or grandparent living under the same roof, for example, need to create psychological safety and cultivate a sense of belonging for each family member? They are family. Doesn't being in a family or living under the same roof provide guarantees that all members of the clan feel like they belong? The answer is no. As heads of our households or key members sharing the same culture at home or among branches of our family tree, we must intentionally cultivate an environment in which everyone has an equal chance to thrive. Therefore, on today's Danielle Inspires, our topic is how to foster psychological safety and belonging at home. Stay tuned for insights and inspirations to fuel your transformation coming up next. Before we get into today's juicy content, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the alert button to be aware of new content as soon as it is released. I'm bringing you fresh content each and every month, and today is no exception. Now on to today's inspirational episode. Two concepts we need to unpack first are belonging and psychological safety. People have a sense of belonging when they feel like they can be themselves around others. I feel like I belong when I'm in a space and among people with whom I can put my guard down and be vulnerable. Belonging means being in a place where I'm not going to be condemned or deliberately harmed. It's a place where the people are linked to my happiness and well-being, so that disruptions that impact me impact them, and goodness that impacts me impacts them. Where I belong, I matter. I'm recognized, honored, and celebrated. Since my authentic self is different from your authentic self, you and I can be in the same space and group, and I feel like I belong, but you do not. The environment and group might be more accommodating to my uniqueness than to yours. And you might feel like you can't be yourself under those conditions. I would love for you to think about what conditions need to be in place for you to feel like you belong under the roof you share with others and within close relationships. The other thing I want to mention about belonging is that I feel like I belong when those around me are vulnerable with me. They let down their hair and they feel at home in my presence. People who are guarded in intimate spaces with me outside of work send off warning bells in my mind when they want me to trust them while they don't trust me enough to be their authentic selves. That imbalance of trust and vulnerability can be a recipe for disaster. For me, belonging requires mutual trust and vulnerability, or else I'm going to hold back being myself to the measure I perceive someone else holding back. The next concept we need to discuss is psychological safety. Psychological safety is a term coined by Amy Edmondson that means there is a shared belief among family members that the family is safe for interpersonal risk taking. It means that within a family environment, family members feel comfortable proposing new ideas without fear of judgment. They feel safe pushing back or voicing dissent when they disagree with something, and they know that it's okay to take risks and make mistakes because their family will look out for them. And the family will give them feedback when needed if they see any potential problems. I would like for you to think about one person who makes you feel psychologically safe. Who is that one person who makes you feel safe to take risks and try new things? Who is the one person who supports your ideals and will provide you with valuable feedback if they don't agree with you? I have 5 siblings, and I'm closest to the oldest of 6, which is Yvette and Bobby. I was raised under the same roof as Yvette and Bobby, and we've weathered many storms together as a tight-knit group. I know that those two have my back no matter what, because experience from birth until now has proven them to be my home away from home. No matter where I am in the world, if either one of them is there with me, I feel like I'm at home. When I use the word home, there's a lot of positivity and nostalgia around that concept for me, while for someone else, there could be a lot of negativity and pain. And for others, the term home might not conjure up any sentiments at all. When a couple decides to make a home together, they think home means the same thing to them, but that's not always the case. For one, home can be a contentious place where arguments erupt at the drop of a dime. For the other, home might be a place where there's lots of loving interactions. Nevertheless, home is the stage where intimate stories of our lives unfold, and the audience within those 4 walls or people in our personal space might not like what they see. Each person in a home is a cast member, starring in their own show while also being supporting cast members for each other. Personalities don't always mesh well. Proclivities can disrupt performances, and less preferred genres can be relentlessly replayed. There's a primary genre playing out in your home among the cast of characters in your life. Tell me which genre best describes your home life. Drama, comedy, action, fantasy, horror, romance, or thriller? Feel free to type your response in chat. I lived in a horror/tragedy genre for 14 years of my adult life, and I don't know how God brought me through, but He did. Horror is one of the largest genres of speculative fiction, which is intended to frighten, scare, or disgust. I was frightened, scared, and disgusted in my own home. Tragedy is a genre of drama based on human suffering and mainly the terrible or sorrowful events that befall a main character. Traditionally, the intentions of tragedy is to invoke an accompanying catharsis or pain that awakens pleasure for the audience. Like most people, I don't like pain, but pain can serve a positive purpose, which is to awaken pleasure. We often gravitate toward painful relationships to mirror back to ourselves the pain we've been carrying through life. Those intense feelings of displeasure can and should compel us to find our Eden, which is a place of fulfillment, peace, and pleasure. Eden is our oasis. It's a place so majestic and delightful that its magic sustains us when we enter oppressive or unfavorable environments. We all want a way out of our pain, and some people think a way out is just to take themselves out by suicide. There is no pleasure on the other side of suicide, though. You won't find peace nor pleasure by killing yourself. And that is one of the saddest realities of suicide. Although your flesh remains on earth as it decomposes, your consciousness lives on in a world you're not yet prepared to enter. Suicide destroys your physical form. It doesn't destroy the less tangible aspects of your life, like your consciousness, your thoughts, feelings, and such. If your consciousness is plagued by pain and suffering, and you enter the afterlife by suicide, then don't expect pleasure to await you on the other side. Expect more intense grief and sorrow and regret. The intensity is amplified because you will no longer have your physical means to filter, suppress, or numb the pain. You basically live on in a state of agony for eternity. There is a path from pain to pleasure in this life. But when your life on earth ends, the Bible makes it clear that there is an impassable chasm between pain and pleasure and eternity. Meaning, your only chance to journey from pain to pleasure exists on earth. There's a Hebrew word in the Bible that means pleasure. The word for pleasure also refers to a place, a territory providing the optimal environment for a family unit to experience heavenly bliss on earth. In the Hebrew tongue, this place is pronounced Aden, but in King James language, it is pronounced Eden. When God created man and woman, he planted a garden in a territory called Eden and placed the man and woman in the garden. Eden means pleasure. And I would think a garden inside of Eden meant double the pleasure, because that's how I feel in my garden. The first man and the first woman lived as husband and wife in a delightful home environment that provided a sense of psychological safety and belonging. Their wants and needs were fully realized in Eden, and they had no worries, no grief, no pain, no sorrows, and no regrets until they chose an inferior alternative to their blissful reality. The alternative didn't seem inferior to them. In fact, a cunning influencer presented the alternative to Eden as a superior reality. But guess what the alternative to pleasure is, my friend? It isn't greater pleasure, it's pain. The cunning influencer pointed out to them the path to pain. As a family unit, Adam and Eve walked down that path together. and the lives of their descendants, which includes you and me, has not been the same since. In your travels on earth, you will most certainly find worries, grief, regrets, heartaches, and all manner of woes and sufferings. You might have made a home for yourself in the midst of this chaos, as I did a few years back. I used to live at the corner of pain and suffering for 14 years of my adult life. I knew that my Eden existed, just as I know your Eden exists as well. The question for me back then was, how do I get to Eden from here? What is the path that will lead me away from this emotional agony to my forever happy place? You can pivot from a constant reality of pain and make your home in pleasure by beginning your journey today. The journey from pain to pleasure is an emotional journey involving a series of healthy choices that are right for you. What's emotionally healthy for me might be toxic for you, so you have to discover the dynamics of your Eden and understand that what makes you happy will evolve over time. Therefore, you must be ready to go with the flow of internal joy, to remain in the center of your own bliss. If you recall the story of Adam and Eve, those two lovebirds were surrounded by love, light, and laughter. There wasn't much trouble for them to get into, and God didn't have a long list of don'ts for them. He only had one warning: don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, Adam and Eve were surrounded by a plethora of healthy options, which is totally contrary to the world we live in today. For Adam and Eve, there was only one unhealthy option, which existed in part in order for free will to truly exist. We need opposing alternatives for there to be free will. If there's a left, there needs to be a right. If there's an up, there needs to be a down. Free will requires heaven and hell, as well as pleasure and pain. God cannot give you free will and then withhold evil from you. Free will must be exercisable, which means you need varied options from which to choose your doom or your uprising. Life didn't happen to you. You created the life that you have by your choices. If you want a different reality, exercise your free will and make decisions that will lead you toward the life you desire. You might have heard people say, where there's a will, there's a way. That saying has been proven to me to be true in my life and in the lives of many others. As children of God, made in the image and likeness of God, we have the power to create paths from where we are to where we want to be or where we need to be. Between here and there, life happens to us and for us to prepare for the journey and the destination. Sometimes you won't see a clear path before you, but I urge you to move forward because the path will emerge as you take baby steps in the direction of your heart's desire. As of today, you have everything you need to get started, to be in motion toward better. If you can, said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. Take God at His word. All things are possible. Even the impossible is possible if you dare to believe. Today, let's exercise our free will and direct it toward pleasure. Remember, Eden for me might look totally different than your Eden. Eden is the optimal ecosystem in which human life thrives. If you don't know your Eden, think about your ideal vacation location. Maybe your ideal vacation involves skiing in Port du Soleil, France, climbing mountains in Tanzania, relaxing on the beach in Hawaii, or backpacking across Europe. Vacation planning often starts with the location first, and then the activities we enjoy doing on location. Now, we don't necessarily want to live where we vacation, but if we find ourselves returning to a vacation spot again and again, then there are aspects of our eating in those locations. I want you to think about vacation spots that speak to you or the environment in which you would like to retire. Think about the climate, the housing, the amenities, and the different sights and sounds stimulating peace and pleasure within you. Get a good mental picture of your eating and jot down some notes describing it. I was 50 years old when I zeroed in on my eating. I've always enjoyed the beach life, but I didn't realize how much being on the beach on a balmy day invigorated my being. I used to dislike the cold, but now I despise it. I felt like going into depression during the winters, and summers never seemed long enough to recover from the impact of winter on my psyche. As I started to become more mindful of factors impacting my mental and emotional wellness, I felt empowered to take charge of my holistic well-being, spirit, soul, and body. I want you to be in the driver's seat of your own life, navigating toward better. You decide what better looks like for you, and I will decide what better looks like for me. Let us vow not to give circumstances the wheel. Don't let your doubts steer you toward inferior alternatives, and don't allow your fears to drive you off a cliff. Stay in control of where your life is going and give yourself a chance at real happiness by making your home in Eden. A big part of self-care is in living in an ecosystem in which you and your family will thrive. Find your Eden and dwell there. I am a strong advocate of self-care for many reasons. And one reason is because self-care prepares you to attend to the wants and needs of yourself and others. Your self-care regimen should build you up and keep you going strong day after day, nourishing your physical, mental, and emotional needs. Daily self-care positions you to be your best and give your best. Once you are in the habit of showing up for yourself and advocating for your wants and needs, then you are in the best possible position to serve others. You cannot contribute to an atmosphere of psychological safety and belonging for others until your self-care regimen is fully functioning, preparing you to conquer the day. Our service to others is to serve from our overflow. When you operate from overflow, you have extra available for others. So when you give, you aren't placing yourself in a deficit situation. To the contrary, you have already prepared your heart, energy, time, and substance to give generously. Think for a moment about the household in which everyone engages in self-care. Each person holds themselves accountable to be at their best. And they take the time to replenish themselves with love and patience. They create within themselves the capacity for forgiveness, acceptance, and kindness. I want you to make the effort to create the capacity within yourself to put your guard down and be vulnerable, inviting others into that intimate space of belonging. When you put down your defenses, others feel safe to be themselves around you. Your children, spouse, parents, or housemates feel comfortable proposing new ideas without fear of judgment. They feel safe pushing back or voicing dissent when they disagree with something. They know that it's okay to take risks and make mistakes because you have prepared yourself for such a time as this. Family, we have family members committing suicide, and that reality breaks my heart. I can't sit idly by and not address this crisis. Let's look at some suicide statistics in the United States and globally that were compiled by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. In the U.S., in 2019, men died by suicide 3.63 times as often as women. On average, there are 130 suicides per day. In 2019, firearms accounted for 50.39% of all suicide deaths. Let's look at the global statistics. An estimated 703,000 people die by suicide worldwide each year. The global suicide rate is over twice as high among men than women. Over half, 58%, of all deaths by suicide occur before the age of 50 years old. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available to you 24 hours a day. That number appears on the screen before you. I have one more statistic. An individual suffering with depression is 20 times more likely to die by suicide than someone without the disorder. Someone in your household or in your circle of influence might be battling toxic emotions and suicidal thoughts. You might be the person I'm referring to. You might be the one who needs to know that their life matters and that they belong wherever they are planted. Family, you matter to God. Your life has meaning and purpose. God loves you with a patient and forgiving love. He has the capacity to bear your faults, flaws, and shortcomings and to heal you. He has the power to help you transition from intense pain to blissful pleasure. You are worthy of attention. You are worthy of love and respect and honor. And I have created a safe space at Danielle Inspires for you to feel like you belong and that your life matters. I hope you feel the love today and take everything I'm saying to heart. Until next time, be bold, be great, and be inspired. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Danielle Inspires. If you haven't done so already, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the alert button so you are aware of new content as soon as it is released, and share this video with those you love. See you soon.